the oven for 375.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural Chef Meets BC Grape Somm Smackdown, Victoria. We're live here in Victoria. I'm Laura Kittmer with the BC Wine Institute, and we are thrilled to have partnered with CAPS BC, the Canadian Association of Professional Sommeliers, in bringing together some of the brightest sommeliers in the city, pairing 100% BC wine with these delicious chef creations in front of you, battling it out for the best BC wine pairing of the evening. So they have prepped for weeks. They are ready. Thank you to all of our judges at home for tuning in, tasting along, providing your votes. You've got some challenging work ahead of you, so let's get started. It is my privilege to introduce our MC for tonight. He is a huge supporter of BC wine and local BC food. We all know him as the food editor for Vancouver Magazine, the city editor of Western Living. Here with us to lead us through these 3 courses and 9 BC wine pairings is Neil McClellan. Have a great evening.
All right, thanks, Laura. Hi, everybody. We're in Victoria. This is the 3rd leg of the Somm Smackdown. Vancouver and Calgary have already happened. We have winners there who are going to be going to the finals in the Okanagan later this month. But Victoria, let's take a look out our back shoulder. Not too shabby where we're sitting today. I'm super psyched about it. So Laura briefly discussed what the setup is going to be. We have 3 sommeliers here. They're going to introduce themselves in a second. They're going to pair wines with 3 chefs. And I'm going to introduce the 3 chefs right now. On my far right is Nick Nutting from Wolf in the Fog in Tofino. If we went out the water and hooked around and hoofed it for about an hour and a half in a boat, we would be at Nick's restaurant up in Tofino, one of the great places in the whole province. So we're super happy to have Nick here. Next is, that's Austin Liu is next. I was going to go in a different order. Austin is on his home turf right now. We're at the inn at Laurel Point. I should have said that. If we walked about 25 feet, we'd be at Austin's restaurant, Aura. One of the great rooms in all of Victoria, and one of the most beautiful rooms in all of Victoria, as you can see right now. And as I go all the way this way, we have Matt Cassano. If we were in a boat, Matt, we could be at yours, and if we could row across the water right now, legitimately just over my shoulder right there, and would be at Boom and Batten, which is Matt's restaurant. So these guys have prepared 3 dishes, and the 3 sommeliers have done their best to see if they can pair them out of this world. And let's start with Adriano. They're going to introduce themselves right now.
My name is Adriano, and I'm going to start talking a little bit about the first wine that I chose for the pairing. I'm from Brazil and I work at 10 Acres, and I'm very happy to work with a lot of BC wines because we have a farm-to-table concept, so we focus on local cuisine and a lot of local products, including the wine. And I have the BC Wine Institute always support me and all my staff to educate them and introduce the BC wines not to our community but to the world. We have a lot of tourists here, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy my tastings. Should I talk about the first course now?
No, we'll go on to Joey. Well, you guys will introduce yourself, and then we'll go to the first course after. Okay. So Joey, let us hear about you.
Hi, I'm Joey Sprout. I'm a sommelier here, and I do some private wine consulting. I took a little bit of a hiatus. I was in wine sales and in the industry, managing restaurants for years. But I took a hiatus to have 2 kids, and I own my own business with my husband. So I'm a sommelier by trade and by love and by passion, but I kind of do some consulting on the side for that. So recently I was at Swan's, which is a liquor store and hotel, brewery, and restaurant. I'm consulting there, and I have a lot of love for them, and hopefully I'll be able to go back and consult with them soon. So on to you.
Yeah, hey, Daniel.
My name's Daniel Stieffather. I'm a sommelier, WSET instructor, and a wine agent. My background is in hospitality, but I joined
There's a huge amount of variety. Obviously, when you look at BC wines, you have all the grapes in the world, from Alvarinho to Zinfandel, that people grow and you can choose. And we have a cool amount of variety here. We have 10 acres, which is hipster, like actual farm to actual table. We have Joey working with Swans, who looks like it could come out of the Fat Duck in England. And we have Daniel from the sales side a little bit these days, but it really does. It really spans sort of groups of people who love BC wine, and the pairings that are coming up, we're going to see there's across the board on a bunch of ones. There's not too many ones that are all similar, so it's going to be exciting to see who comes out on top. And with that, judges at home, you're making some food. We may as well get to our first course. We only have so much time. Let's see if I can introduce our first course, and that's going to be from our friend Chef Nick Nutting at Wolf in the Fog. He's just going to come here, and I've had the luxury of trying this dish first. It's pretty insane. It's pretty good. It's pretty tough to pair. It has a lot of things going on with it. One of the things that is interesting, as you see the dishes that are being prepared here, and as some of you taste them at home, they're complex. I often wonder when the chefs have a challenge like this, it's a wine pairing challenge, whether or not they're trying to throw softballs across the plate for their friends, the sommeliers, or whether or not they're throwing curveballs, because when I look at these dishes, there's not 1, not 2, but sometimes 4 or 5 elements, some of which don't automatically go together. And even as my basic understanding, when you're a somm, there's a bunch of real, frankly, landmines that can grab you and catch you and get you in a lot of trouble. I was in Vancouver and I've watched Calgary. As I say, this is the 3rd level. And in Vancouver in particular, there was actually a nice variety, but sometimes we had the same grapes of each category, and people said, well, it's got to be a Chardonnay that has some body, that has some richness. Here, as you'll see as we go through the night, some of the varietals we have are across the board from each other. But for this event, they wouldn't be in the same time. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited to see what you think, and I can't wait to have the somms chat about where their minds were. But let's talk about food, and the person to do that is our friend Chef Nick Nutting. Nick.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.
It's nice to get out of the small town and come to the big city here.
Yeah.
Get to do an event like this and bring some of the taste of Tofino to a new audience. So I hope this worked well with your wines. Definitely all the pairings look really awesome. I look forward to trying them all after. But yeah, so my dish here, this is something, definitely the base of this dish has been on the menu at Wolf in the Fog since we began. We source seaweed from Bamfields. We use 2 different types of kelp in this salad. So the base has marinated seaweed salad. It's got a little bit of sesame oil. There's a bit of heat in there. There's definitely ginger, garlic, rice vinegar, mirin. There's a little bit of marinated daikon on the bottom of the plate as well that I tossed in a sort of really loose wasabi dressing. Fresh pine mushrooms from the forest literally our local forager guy up in Tofino picked these the day that I was leaving and handed them off. Albacore tuna, which the season is literally on right now up there. So this is beautiful, fresh sashimi grade tuna. And then puffed wild rice. So we sourced this from a farm in Manitoba. A little bit of sesame mayo on the bottom, but lots of umami flavor here. Definitely a little bit of wasabi type heat, a little bit of that sort of aromatic forest flavor from the pine mushrooms, a little bit of crunch, and definitely rich on rich. And the final thing that we did there was spoon a little bit of brown butter over the top of it. And so tuna is already a really fatty fish to begin with, and this is just like the next level on top of that. So I look forward to trying the wines that were paired with this. I would definitely go with something kind of crisp and clean. I like bubbles with this dish personally, but I guess we'll see. It's a smackdown, right?
It's a smackdown. Okay, well, sorry, I feel like I undersold you. I said there might be 5 elements, and Nick, you've just said 17 or 18.
Yeah, well,
I hope the Bamfield kelp didn't throw anyone into that. I hope they weren't thinking it was going to be Flores Island kelp or something, because that can be tricky.
No, well, hopefully it wasn't too hard to assemble at home here. I think I gave more than enough of everything to have a bit of fun with it and make a couple mistakes, and really there's no... You could just whip this stuff up together with a spoon and it would taste good. So,
well, it's an amazing dish. Adriano's going to start with us and tell us what he wanted to stand up to this dish. Adriano, what did you choose?
I chose Martin's Lane. I love this winery, the concept behind it's really interesting. Shane is a wonderful winemaker with a really good background in winemaking. So they do a really interesting concept with the Riesling. They have 3 Rieslings. I choose actually the one that have lower acidity and also lowering alcohol as well, because I thought the elements on the dish would kind of increase both. But also the acidity, it's quite high, so it's gonna kind of play around with the kind of fat, buttery elements of the dish. Like I really love albacore tuna that is from here, from the coast, and it's a type of fish that is kind of more rich in texture, but not so much in flavors compared to the other tuna itself. And I think like acidity is going to be the most important element there. And the sugar as well actually is very, very important. So like I was, instead of getting something more crispy and clean, I was planning to getting something more richer as well, like sugar content. So like the Riesling was for me always on my mind there, like also with the sauce and the wild rice as well. So I thought like we need something more bold, more richer. So that's why I was looking for sugar content, but also with the high acidity to cut through all this richness of the dish. And yeah, I think like they work really well. This is also wild fermented, very, very organic kind of style, and the way we do here in BC. So yeah.
I mean, it's a super cool wine. You know, people don't know Martin's Lane. It is from Anthony von Mendel. It is perhaps the most striking architectural winery in the Okanagan, built by Seattle's Tom Kundig. They focus on Pinot Noir, and as you say, these 3 Rieslings that are built to age. I think the 2016, which you're pairing, that's the most recent vintage that's released in the market. So this is a serious place for serious wine for aging. So we'll see how it does. Joey, tell us what you did.
I went with the Summerhill Blanc de Noir. It's a 2008. It's Sipes. When I looked at the components of this dish, I'm not going to lie, I was like, there is a lot of things to look at. And so I had to kind of zoom out and just say albacore tuna as the protein. It's, you know, got a little bit of fattiness. It's delicate still, but then there's these like umami characteristics and mushroom and the rice that's like naturally really like kind of like nutty and warm, and then the brown butter, and then there's this like sesame mayo and the seaweed and the brininess. So there's all these different components, but I got a lot of like richness, fat, umami, salty, briny, which is like so typical of the West Coast, which was amazing. It's kind of like sushi meets like poke, basically. So I naturally went with a bubble because I just love how the bubbles break up that fat, and the mousse just like naturally complements the dish. I toyed with going back and forth between a Chardonnay and a Blanc de Noir, and the Blanc de Noir really does some great things for it. It's 100% Pinot Noir. It's earthy. It's got those like kind of like mushroomy, savory components with a little bit of that red fruit. And I just think it rounds out the dish really nicely. Summerhill is a really cool winery. It's been producing wine since the 80s, even longer. They've got this amazing pyramid. They're biodynamic and organic. So naturally, I thought this was just a really good pairing, and I hope you'll agree.
I don't want to go all fanboy on this wine. You show me another wine region where you can go get a 2000, this wine's for sale right now, where you can get a 2008 bottle of sparkling wine that's under, I think it's under $35, definitely under 40, that's available right now. It just is mind-blowing. It's one of those things that, you know, I hear about and I think, I just want to corner the market. I want to just go buy, just say how much do you have left. 2008, super cool. Not a lot of skin contact. You can tell by looking at it. It's pretty nice and light. And as you said, your other option was the Blanc de Blanc. That's a 2012. That's also available. I think it's under $40 as well. So you could do your little own tasting at home. Super, super cool wine. So far, we're at 2 in. It's going to be tough. Daniel, tell us about number 3.
Okay. Well, I think Adriana wins the award for tallest bottle.
Yeah.
and in this round, Joey wins the award for oldest wine. But for me, what I wanted to do for my selections this evening was not only, you know, give a lot of consideration and pairing towards these amazing chefs and the food that they're producing, but also some shout outs to some of the iconic trailblazers that have really led the way over the last 30 years since we are, after all, celebrating this 30th anniversary. So for starters tonight, I've got the Haywire Vintage Bub. It's the 2013 vintage. And this pays some tribute to the one and only Christine Coletta. You know, definitely a pioneer when it comes to marketing for BCBQA. She started in 1992 as, you know, when VQA and BCWI was in its infancy as the executive director, and worked with them for 7 long years, promoting BC wines and really building that brand. And that is something that Christine has done, you know, year in and year out, is amazing brand building. So, you know, a lot of credit can be given to Christine in those early days of BCWI and building the brand and building the success, not only in BC, but elsewhere. So fast forward 2005, Christine and her husband Steve buy a orchard in Summerland, and 5 years later they produced their first Haywire wine. They built Okanagan Crush Pad as a community to invite other winemakers to use their facilities to produce great wines, and this is one of those great wines that come out of the winery. This is 65% Chardonnay and 35, I can do math, 35% Pinot Noir. This is all coming from Seacrest Mountain Vineyard, which is in Oliver. It's all organically farmed. The base wine for this is done in concrete tank, which is really the hallmark for Okanagan Crush Pad. And then it's put in bottle, and we have, you know, we have traditional method sparkling wine here on lees for 5 years. So it really builds out those beautiful autolytic characteristics in the wine, but then also that like racing minerality that, you know, we love so much, especially here in BC. So when looking at Chef Nick's albacore dish, what really spoke to me was the umami component in that dish. You know, the Bamfield seaweed, not the Salish Sea seaweed or something else, but specifically the Bamfield seaweed. A lot of that great umami, and then also the shoyu. Am I saying that right? The shoyu sauce, which is like a light soya sauce. So really emphasizing that umami characteristic. And for me, if I have umami in food, I love pairing traditional sparkling wine. And this was an obvious choice. And then that nice minerality really sort of, you know, echoes the delicacy of the albacore tuna. I hope yours looked half as good at home as ours did tonight that Chef Nick put together. But those are all the reasons why I picked this wine tonight. And I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
And that's a cool wine. One of the things we were talking about is, this is another thing we're talking about, commitment to being able to drink wine that has some age in it. Again, that's a tricky thing in a lot of areas, especially in a lot of wine areas in North America. This is the 2013, and Chris Collette they've been really serious about early on saying, we're going to put some wine down. So especially with bubbles, so you can see how it develops, so you can see how it can get that toastiness, how it can get more complex and so forth. And Daniel, you and I were talking about the winemaker of this, Matt Dumaine. This isn't wine they made in 2013 and couldn't sell and stuck away and figured it out. This is like a purpose-built wine to age. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Matt, when he looked at creating this wine, they intentionally picked fruit at higher acidity because they knew that they were going to lay this down for 5 years, and that acidity needed to carry on through that secondary fermentation. And when you add all of those like bready, yeasty, bakery, brioche notes of the autolytic character that happens with that much time in bottle, you want to make sure that you still have like a nice, predominant bright fruit component, but also that beautiful acidity and minerality. So yeah, very purpose built, from vineyard all the way to winery, to time in the bottle, to a whole heck of a lot of patience, to now finally getting to crack these open and enjoy.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, Nick, I have a couple of quick questions for you. I tried this dish, and I was surprised. Often when I think of seaweed, I do think of really going to be briny and a really slap in the face of salinity, but I don't know what you did to that. There's a little bit of that, but it is not super briny, is it?
Yeah, so when we receive the seaweed, we blanch it first.
Yeah.
And give it a good rinse. It gets all the sort of slimy sort of agar off of the outside. It makes it a lot less salty, and then we kind of re-inject the amount that we think is correct with the soy, and just balancing it with.
And it still keeps its texture too. There's still, if not a crunch to it, there's still a firmness to it, which is quite awesome. Brown butter on top. I'm not sure if I might have had brown butter on cooked tuna, on cooked albacore. I'm not sure, but on sashimi, I'm not sure I've ever had that. What's the inspiration there?
I first had this at a restaurant I saw that move at a restaurant in Los Angeles over top of a bit of salmon sashimi, and it blew my mind. It was the simplest looking dish, and since then I've played around with it, different fish. Definitely tuna is super fatty. It's the stuff we've been getting this year especially, and I feel like it just enhances the whole thing. Probably lends well to the wine pairing as well, and I don't know, there's something magic about basting butter over top of anything, really.
Yeah, that's right. It's almost never a bad idea. You've not, I don't think you've tasted these wines, but when you see them and hear them described right now, a Riesling that doesn't go so crazy on the acidity, that has a little bit of sweetness, not a ton, but a little bit. A 12-year-old 100% Chardonnay traditional method, and then a more classic with predominant Chardonnay, because it's not more classic, but predominant Chardonnay traditional method. Which one would you if I woke you up in the middle of the night, which would you blurt out and say you think?
Off the top of the head, it would be one of the bubbles probably, but honestly, each of the three sound like they have some redeeming qualities. For sure, like the notes that come off of the puffed rice, it's like plays off of the breadiness of like the older wine, I imagine. The acidity of the first one and that bit of sweetness probably plays pretty well. I'm being very diplomatic here.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. No upside to
it is. Yeah. Yeah. Whoever gets me a bottle over here first wins. But I'd probably say one of the bubbles for me is what I would grab first. But I look forward to being surprised by.
Need to try this one.
I'll say I've tasted all three of these wines. One has 12 years, one has 7. It's a recent vintage of 2016. I'll tell you, we could be drinking them all in 10 years. Easy. I mean, easy. The Riesling's built to go that way. The bubbles are right now, as they're sitting up right now, they're not showing any signs of weakening at all. I mean, I'm just amazed at that sort of idea. I mean, maybe I say 10, maybe 15, but 10 easy. So anyways, okay, well, people at home are going to have their idea and see what they think. I mean, albacore tuna, tell me a little bit about that. I think, we are celebrating all things British Columbia, one of our classics.
For sure.
Tell me about your relationship with albacore.
Okay, so this is...
Tell me about your relationship with albacore.
I've never had a relationship with an albacore tuna before, but... So last week we had our annual tuna derby in Tofino, and if you went down to the dock, you'd see like hundreds and hundreds of these on like laid out. I think there's 20 or 30 boats that go in that thing.
Yeah.
But this is the time that it happens. So these fish follow the warm current from, like, they're following food, and at this time of year, it stretches as far up as Tofino.
Yeah.
The guys still have to go like 30 to 50 miles offshore, and so it's pretty far offshore for sure. So there's a lot of effort that goes into getting it. It's definitely considered a sustainable protein source from the ocean for sure. They reproduce quickly. They're smaller fish. I think the Derby winner was about 26 pounds this year.
Really?
So they're not massive, but the fat content is amazing. They're super versatile. Definitely, I think, best eaten raw.
Yeah.
But they can go a number of ways. And so you can obviously put a bunch of fatty things with it, or you can put acidic things, or a combo of both. They're beautiful looking fish as well. If you've never seen a whole albacore tuna, I caught up, like in the last couple of weeks, I've caught up a ton of these. But they're streamlined, they're super fatty. There's a lot of meat on a fish, and like you said, they're definitely like a BC classic. I haven't eaten them anywhere else in the world but here. So
yeah, they look like a long, beautiful muscle. You know, when you look at the loin, it almost looks like a beautiful pork tenderloin. And frankly, in BC right now, it's not that much more expensive than a pork tenderloin, and it's dynamite, and it's dynamite in your hands. Speaking of which, I'm looking at a, by the way, if you show, I think the thing about play is if you show a knife in the first act of a play, someone better use it. Daniel does show up with a knife. He's not trying to intimidate anyone. He showed it to our other two contestants. I'm going to have Daniel come up. And I love that the royal we, Daniel's going to do some sabering. But one of the great things about the haywire is, BC, we even when we do it super elegant and make a classic method, traditional sparkling, we put a bottle cap on it because we're cool like that. Anyways, let's see it come off.
We consider our carbon footprint when we do things. And we thought, let's get the chefs have been working really hard. And so they've been using their knife skills. Hope everyone else has been using their knife skills at home. Yeah. And now I'm going to do my best. Everybody says whatever you do, don't saber a bottle on live TV.
I do say that.
Hope no one's standing over there. Cheers. BCWI, 30 years.
Never a doubt. You didn't catch me flinching on that, did you? I hope the camera panned away. Never a doubt, Daniel. Well done. Well, that's a good kickoff to our first course. It's a good cheers to Nick, to you, your team at Wolf and the Fog, and all the chefs who've been doing tonight. But you guys have been killing up in Tofino. So for all these years, it's one of the great places. It's one of those true destination restaurants that I know people love to go to. So best of luck.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Well, first course, pretty much done and dusted. People are going to start voting on it and thinking about that right now. I mean, it's an interesting choice. We do have two bubbles, but they're two pretty different bubbles.
We should point out that there was a bit of a typo on mine, and that it's actually a Blanc de Noir and not a Blanc de Blanc.
Yes, sorry.
For the viewers at home.
Yes, for the viewers at home, there are two. We were drinking the Blanc de Noir 2008 from Summerhill. Again for sale.
Yes.
The typo was 2012, 100% Chardonnay, Blanc de Blanc, also still for sale, which is crazy that one of those would be for sale. Both are still for sale at our friends at Summerhill. So there is a typo. But actually, Joey, after you taste that dish, give me a thought right now. I'll give you a do-over. Tell me how the Blanc de Blanc might have been better, and tell me how the Blanc de Noir might have been better with that dish when we see it in an all sort of insane complexity.
So with the age in general, I think like those kind of tertiary, secondary characteristics kind of lend really well to the umami, earthy kind of character of that dish. So I think either way would have been great, because you're going with these kind of like older vintages where they still has like some live fruit, but some of that fruit is kind of dropped off, and you're getting these more complex characteristics that are really pairing well to the complexity of that dish, because it just has so many components going on. So I think either way, the age is great. The Chardonnay would have kind of lended more towards the, like yeasty brioche toastiness. maybe a bit more of that nutty characteristic, which goes really well with some of those components. And then the Blanc de Noir is adding like a little bit of fruit, a little bit of that redness, that cranberry, that tartness, and that earthiness as well. With Pinot Noir, we kind of tend to think of like savory and smoke and earth, and all those kind of like barnyard characteristics. So I think either way it would work. I'd love to try them side by side.
Yeah, it's Joe on a Ferrari or a Maserati when
There
you
you
drive
go.
around the
Yeah,
There's
that's
no
right.
Camrys, no offense to our Toyota driving friends, but
You got it.
perfect. One of the things I think we're going to talk, do we want to zoom in on one of our judges at home? I think, you know, I'd be interested to have a actual sommelier do this. I think we have Matt Cook from Olo. Hey, we in fact do have Matt Cook from Olo. I know that Olo is closed, Matt, tonight.
Tonight, yeah.
Because I'm not saying I was 100% wanted to go there afterwards, but I just know by check the thing and see that you don't open till tomorrow. I'm not committing which restaurant I was choosing first to go to after this, but in fact, you are at home. You've just gone through this. Tell me about your thoughts about the pairing and these three wines.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope to see you tomorrow. First off, thank you, Chef Nick. Awesome dish. I may have had it a few years ago at my one and only time dining at Wolf and Fog, but it was delicious. And great pairings. So to sort of talk my way through them, I did them in the order that they were presented here, with the Riesling first, followed by Summerhill, followed by the Haywire. The Martin's Lane Riesling, it's a rich wine. It's got a lot going on. It's lemon and lime and tons of minerality, beautiful aromatics on it. Initially, I find that it blends really well with the dish, and then it kind of has this long lingering finish afterwards, that lemon lime kind of thing, that citrus notes are hanging on in the palate and kind of overwhelming the dish almost a little bit. I'm getting really picky here. I should preface this by saying all three pairings worked awesome in different ways. And I'm going to get kind of picky on all of them because that's what we're here to do, right? So Adriano, great pairing. It was definitely the boldest of the moves, I think, as well, with that rich wine. Really fun, again, a long citrusy finish to finish off that dish. Moving into the Summerhill, I find that the wine, it's got a really, really nice texture, great creamy texture. It's rich and toasty, like you said. It's got acidity, but like just enough to work with a dish that's got so much umami characteristics going on it, so much richness going on. The wine itself has got this kind of like strawberry, raspberry thing going on, which is fun in a sparkling. It's got this, it reminds me of like bramble bushes in the springtime, where it's kind of sagebrush brambly a little bit, like these greener leafy notes, foresty notes. And that to me really worked well with that umami characteristics of the dish. So the mushroom notes, the seaweed, a little bit of saltiness is in there as well, and it all comes together in kind of a cool little package. And then the Haywire finishing off, the wine itself has got great umami itself. It's got oxidative characteristics to it. It's brioche and mushroom and these sort of apple-y characteristics. It's nutty and still fresh enough to work through the dish. But as I drank the wine, I felt that those oxidative characters kind of overwhelmed the fish and overwhelmed the plate a little bit. Again, a good pairing, but a little bit too aggressive of a wine almost, which is interesting. So as I went back and forth amongst the three, my winner for the round would be the Summerhill. So Joey, good work on that pairing.
Very good. Well, Matt, those are very insightful comments. I want you to blurt out right now. Just tell me, you can't choose a Riesling and you can't choose anything. You can't choose anything with bubbles. Without thinking, what would you pair with?
I'm gonna go Albarino. Something super fresh, and it's got that minerality still. I mean, if it could be from something from BC, great. If we're going to go to the west coast of Spain, even better. But that really fresh, salty kind of characteristics of a wine. You could even look to Vancouver Island wines, maybe with an Ortega or something like that. Could be pretty fun. That'd be cool.
Okay, thanks for the comments, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, well, so, yeah, those are some interesting comments. That's some frank talk from them, I would say, insightful, but good. There was. That's why you go see Matt. Exactly.
To go see Frank.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, let's move on to dish number 2, and that's going to be our friend Matt Cusano from Boom and Batten. Hey, Matt. Hey, how are you? I'm good. Tell us what you have.
So I've prepared here. It is a Canadian Arctic char. It's sitting on top of a succotash of corn and BC purple potato, and then a little peach and mustard vinaigrette around the outside, and some beautiful local edible flowers from our friend Tamara at Bright Greens.
It's a beautiful looking dish.
Thank you.
Tell me about Arctic char.
So this specific char that we have is Canadian.
Yeah.
This one is farmed, so ocean-wise, very sustainable. Obviously an extremely cold water fish coming from northern Canada. It's got a lot of great fat in it, quite oily. Lends really well to baking, which is the preparation that I've recommended for our home cooking tonight. Overall, very versatile fish, good kind of mild flavor, very similar to a trout or salmon. Yeah. Yeah, very tasty.
Okay, well, again, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
You know, you have the fish, but then you have the mustard vinaigrette. You have the corn, and there's a bunch of interesting things going on. To mix up the order, I'm going to ask Joey, you to go first and tell me what you paired with this dish.
Okay, great. Thanks, Neil. So for this dish, I decided, well, first of all, the dish is beautiful. When I looked at the components of the dish, I automatically thought summertime barbecue. These are all the things that I would kind of eat in the summer. Corn, cherry tomatoes, potatoes, like nice fillet of fish. So I originally thought that it was going to be a little bit on the sweeter side, and then actually when I tasted it, the peach mustard kind of played in and gave it a bit more of that. So I really needed to get into having the mustard on the fish with the succotash, and then that kind of like sweetness of the corn really came through. Arctic char is really beautiful because it's kind of, it's a pink fish. It's a bit more delicate than salmon, but it still has that like fattiness, that richness. So I originally thought, oh, I love like a big, you know, skin contact Pinot Gris. And then I remembered, this is something that I've loved for a lot of this summer. It's the 2019 Spearhead White Pinot Noir. This has very little contact. It comes from Spearhead in Kelowna. Grant Stanley is the winemaker. He was at Quails Gate before, oddly enough. Matt was also at Quails Gate. He really does Pinot Noir justice. That's kind of a grape that he really wants to work with, and he understands the challenges of it. So he's got 3 different vineyards. So this actually has a blend of 3 different Pinot Noirs in it from 3 different vineyards. Very low skin contact, like what I said. Pinot Noir is a red wine that you can pair with fish. So naturally having a white Pinot Noir, the tannins are low enough that it really lends really well to the body of the fish. It has these kind of like white, floral, melon, orange characteristics, a little bit of that red fruit coming through, a slight sweetness that kind of like matches the corn and the cherry tomatoes, and that kind of like peach mustard. So I think that they complement each other really well. They have enough weight that complements each other, and I think there's a bit of like that kind of nice marriage between the wine and the dish itself. So well done. I think it's a beautiful pairing.
And it's a super cool pairing. You know, Spearhead has been killing it with Pinot Noir, and when they got Grant to come over and be their winemaker, it even upped it a notch. But white Pinot Noir is not something you see every day. It's definitely the first in the Okanagan. I feel like I might have seen someone else who's tried it a bit, but really when you say white Pinot Noir, Okanagan, spearhead is what everyone's minds go to. They really have pioneered it. You won't see it once in a blue moon in Oregon in the Willamette, but really it's a pretty unique offering, and it's a pretty unique. I like the pairing. It's cool. Okay, Daniel, tell us what you've done.
Yeah, great pairing with white Pinot. I saw that show up and I got a little worried. So I went with the other Burgundy grape, which is Chardonnay. And I think, sticking true to paying homage to some of the trailblazers in BC wine history, I don't think we can talk about the BCWI without, talking about Harry McWaters. Ultimately, he is the godfather of BC wine. And I'm very proud to be pairing this wine that bears his name with Matt's dish. Harry, he started Sumac Ridge Winery in 1980, and he was the founding chairman of the BCWI back in 1990. And he sat as a director for 17 years with the BCWI. And he was, instrumental in many things. But, one of the big things was BC VQA and Canada VQA. He really sort of pushed for that standard and really raising the bar for everybody in this industry. Sadly, we know that he passed away last summer. But his legacy lives on, and it's pretty cool to be presenting a wine, like I said, with his name on it. This Chardonnay, this is the 2018 McWaters Collection Chardonnay. These grapes were planted by Harry and the legendary Dick Cleve, one of the great BC viticulturists, back in 1993 at the Phantom Creek and Becker Vineyard in between Oliver and Osoyoos. And this vineyard is now owned by the new kid to the neighborhood, Phantom Creek Winery, and so it's pretty special to be having this wine. This wine was done 25% in New French oak, a total of 2 barriques and 1 foudre to be exact. It's only 368 cases exactly produced of this wine. A special small offering to pair with the second course. When I sat down and met with Matt and talked a little bit about the dish, we talked about like that sweetness of the corn succotash and sort of that subtle smoke on the char. And so I wanted something for me, like, if I used to love popcorn, now I love Chardonnay. So, for me, if you have corn or popcorn, anything like that, with a little bit of butter, a little bit of weight, you want to pair it with a wine that'll complement that. And so this Chardonnay was my choice. And then also with that restrained level of oak, it's similar in Matt's philosophy around that restrained level of smoke on the fish, so not to overpower it, let the fish shine through, and to let the really good fruit shine through. So thanks for this wine, Harry. Thanks for all you've done, and I hope you enjoy the pairing. Thanks.
It's a super cool pairing, and I mean, again, I think everyone here can't say enough about Harry McWaters. Legend doesn't even cover it. I'm interested. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm interested in, I would say you'd normally say in the second act of Harry's life, but it was like the 19th act of Harry's life when he came up with Time Winery and the McWaters. McWaters was initially known as quite a ripe Chardonnay, I would say almost California-esque. And that was at a time when a lot of people were saying, I only want stainless steel. I only want stainless steel Chardonnay. Tell me what you were drawn to this, maybe Russian River-y light style?
Sure. I mean, you think of like where the Phantom Creek Vineyard is and that area on the Black Sage Bench. I mean, that's some of the hottest real estate in the Okanagan. So, Chardonnay is a great, cool climate grape. So why does this make sense? And I think, it's about really good viticulture. Yeah. It's about having some older vines that might, not produce as much as you want them to. So there's a bit of restraint there. And I think there's a time and a place for a very full forward style of Chardonnay. Yeah. I think they've done a very good job in keeping that oak restrained, but also presenting those nice, bright tropical fruits. And, if you think about that little delicate element of peach in the vinaigrette in Matt's dish there, I think that actually is like spot on with with the tropical fruit and the stone fruit that you find in this wine. So.
And again, I'm the person who always goes back to value. But think about this. I can't remember, but this wine, I think it's a little under $30. This comes from our Tocalan. This comes from our Merceau Grand Cru vineyard, and it's under $30. It's some of the greatest acreage in the entire country, and you could have it for under $30. Tell me again another place where you can do that, and I'll fly there immediately. Okay, Adriano, tell me about you. What did we do here?
Well, I think like sparkling wine should be served in any part of the meal. So I like to play around a little bit out of the box, and every time when I pair in the restaurant, I like to pair wine, sparkling wine with desserts, if they're in the off-dry style. And then we can do also on the main course, especially when I have lobster and steak, I love like a richer, full body, pink sparkling wine, special vintage. Actually, Boulanger 2004 from Trialto that my friend introduced me a few years ago. Anyway, it's amazing. But anyway, so going back to this one, I love Sperling. Anna, it's a phenomenal winemaker. She's been in the industry for a long time. Her family grew a lot of fruit in the Okanagan Valley, I believe from 1925, if I'm not mistaken. But so she's converted everything to organic and biodynamic. So I have a truly love and respect for the way she treats her vines and her wines. And this is actually a fairly new vines. So I believe it was planted 2008 or 2009. And this wine was made in 2011. So it was quite young vines for the bubble. But I'm sure she did like a lot of special things with the wine. I love this wine so much. And she waited for 3 years in the East on the lease before the engagement, and the wine was aged until today, let's say. And I think like it's in his peak. Maybe it's gonna even wage a little bit more, like maybe 3, 4, 5 years. But I think like it's drinking super nice like right now. And Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and yeah. So like truth is the char is like between the truth and the salmon. But a little bit more fuller on and kind of not so fatty, but like more rich in flavors in the same time, but super clean. So I thought that was gonna be the main thing. So I thought like, I always think like chard go really well with bubbles. So I was thinking like, okay, that's the time for the bubbles instead of the first course. So yeah, the other elements as well, the sweetness, the slight smoke of the fish as well. Some of the notes of the sparkling wine have a little bit of light smoke notes as well. Yeah, I think it's a great wine to jump off, especially coming from a Riesling. So some people start with sparkling wine all the time and then go to other wines, white, rosé, and red. And I did something different. I start with a sweeter wine and richer, and then I come for a very dry and crispy white. So I come from a slightly sweeter, more fruity, and then to a very dry, and then preparing your palate. So we're actually not just impairing the food, but to the moment as well. Preparing to our next course, washing your mouth as well for the next course as well. So yeah, I think I hope everybody enjoy. I love this wine so much.
It's great. Anne Sperling is a total rock star. She's so cool. Such an amazing winemaker. Again, this wine's for sale. It's 2011. I'm not sure if you have to be in the wine club to do it, but it's for sale. And it's a beautiful package. I know that sounds not, but that is, when you think about sparkling, still a lot of people just want to have it all the time because it pairs so well with food. But when it's an occasion, I just love that bottle. It is just, it's so cool. Okay, blurt out which one of those you think, without trying them, you think might go with it, Matt? Which one, for you? This can be a little bit personal. For you, which one is, as a chef, what would you think right off the bat?
I actually cooked this dish in my house about a week and a half ago, and I drank Chardonnay with it.
Okay.
So I would say Chardonnay for sure. That'd be my go-to, but definitely two other intriguing pairings with the Pinot Noir and the sparkling. And I'd definitely like to get a glass of both of them to see kind of.
Yeah, well, that's the only way you can do it.
it.
That's the only way you can do it. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome, great dish, Matt. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. You can take the rowboat back across to the restaurant.
My water taxi's here. Thanks,
That's
guys.
great. Thanks. Thanks, Matt. That's a great dish. You know, I'd like to go back to one of our judges if we can. I think we have Sharon McLean, one of the great wine educators. Yes, we do. Hello, Sharon. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Having a great night so far. Can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you.
No. You
Hang.
can just speak. I'm adding modest amounts to this anyways.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Sharon.
Okay, good, good, good. Okay, so first of all, the amazing wine.
And less.
Just stunning. I think all the pairings work for different reasons. Starting with this pairing, oh my gosh, and that's such a mineral-driven, lean, clear, sparkling wine, just incredible. I was a little bit concerned maybe that the food was so rich and had so much weight and all of those sweet notes that it would not work. But what I found was after I had eaten the food, I had that lingering acidity in my mouth from the wine, which just made me refreshed and ready to go back for more. So it worked on the end and just it set you up for eating more. And I'm getting very, very full and I'm still eating all of this food like crazy.
I know that.
Then we go to the Spearhead. And that, this is always one of my favorite wines, this white Pinot Noir. I thought it had such good weight and great texture that really did match the food. And it also had those little sweet notes, that honeydew, almost sort of tropical note there. I do worry it was a little bit overpowered at times, and there was a little bit of tension between the wine and the dish. And then the Mick-Waters. Oh my gosh, like you're matching the power there, the texture there. You've got all of the tropical notes that just played into that dish. So I thought that was a really good pairing as well. So well done, all three of you. You're not making our job easy at all. It's incredibly difficult, but stunning pairings and amazing food. So thank you, chef.
Thank you. Thanks for your insights. I think she's right. I mean, there's, it is. We have a tale of three cities right here, in the sense that, they all come at it from different ways, and those are the ones that make it tough to judge, but also the ones that make it fun to judge. So, it's not easy. And again, that's not a super easy dish. Char is so difficult. Wild char has such a different flavor profile than farm char. I'm curious if this farm char is from there. It used to be someone who was growing it on like Road 12.
Yeah, it was down near Oliver.
Yeah. And it was a big thing for a little while. I don't know where else you can get farm char. And it's such a lovely, delicate fish. And it does really skirt that sort of not quite salmon, not quite trout.
But
Just give me enough.
I asked Matt, he said, no, it's not farmed. It's from the Atlantic Ocean. Or sorry, the Arctic Ocean is where it's from. So not Atlantic.
Yeah, the Atlantic is by the way.
Recorrect.
It's stupid.
No, but he corrected me if I asked if it was from the farm up there in Oliver.
Okay, enough of this lightness to medium lightness. Let's drop the hammer and go big and go red and see what's going on. I'm going to have Chef Austin Liu on his home turf of Aura Restaurant here at Laurel Point, and he has our heavy meat course. So not that heavy, but let's hear about it.
So we have shiokoji rubbed sirloin, rendang beef pithivier with some fresh jus and chanterelles.
It's a beautiful looking dish. When you're doing this, are you trying to just do a dish that you like and let them do it? Are you doing a dish that's friendly to pairings, or just think, I'm going to do a dish that has a couple elements and really make them jump through a few hoops to figure out how they're going to match a wine with all the elements?
I'd say a little bit of all that, but really, match with your wines, but really showcase what we're about here at Aura. We really love to showcase our diverse background in the kitchen and also a lot of talent. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see what our gang of wizards came up with. Daniel, I'm going to start with you this time.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jeff, for all the interesting flavor profiles in this dish. It's delicious, but definitely when like reading it off a menu, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. Before I dive into the pairing, thought I'd talk a little bit about the wine. So I thought we'd get in our time travel machine and go back to 2003. And I did some cellar rating and found something special for everybody. I don't know the last time you cracked a bottle of 2003 BC wine and were as impressed as I was when I tried it again this afternoon. But this wine here, this is the 2003 Tinhorn Creek Oldfield Collection Merlot. That was made by Sandra Oldfield. And having the opportunity to work with Sandra for a few years, you could really see that she was a barrier breaker. And I think she really, made a significant impact on BC wine. Even though she was imported from California back in 1995, you could tell that she planted her heart and soul in the Okanagan, and she was this innovative, passionate, driven female winemaker in a male-dominated industry, and really, quite frankly, like she blazed a lot of trail for a lot of future amazing winemakers that we're very happy and thankful to have here in BC. And that includes also the assistant winemaker at Tinhorn Creek, Coral, who's been there for 23 years and is now continuing to make the wine there. So pretty special. If you go back in your time travel, you go back to 1990 and there was about 18 licensed wineries in BC. In 2003, the year this wine was made, there was about 89-ish wineries in licensed grape wineries in BC. That was also the year that there were some pretty devastating wildfires. Sandra remembers that, and about 300 homes were lost in Kelowna that year. So maybe a bit of foreshadowing for what we've been dealing with the last few years as far as fires are concerned. And now it's 30 years later, and we're at 282 and growing, I think is the official count. So it's pretty cool that we can, jump into a bottle and travel through time and take snapshots of how this industry has progressed. Sandra was the first to put Stelvin caps on all her wines. That was back in 2004 after this vintage. They were the first carbon neutral winery in 2014. And then Sandra was also a big key part in creating the first sub-GI in the Okanagan, which was the Golden Mile Bench. And that was in 2015. And now we have more than just one, which is exciting. So this wine, this 2003 Merlot, this was grown both on the Golden Mile Bench and Black Sage Bench. It spent about 18 months in both US and French oak. And then we laid it down for a really long time until today, which is freaking awesome. 17 years later, we get to open up this bottle and see what, great, wine growing, wine making, and maybe Stelvin caps have done for this industry. And very cool to try something with this much age from BC. So back to Chef Austin's dish. Afterwards, after I sort of went through the frustration process of trying to figure this out, I thought, let's just pick something, where we've got a wine that has some great tertiary characteristics, that like earthy leather component that the wine develops with a lot of time in the cellar, because I think that's going to go really well with the aromatics that are coming from this dish. And then that when I met with Austin and talked about the dish, he really talked about that yeast jus. And when we tried it this evening before this all happened, it was lights out. It was so good. And I think that like that earthy sort of forest floor component from this wine, pairs really well with that. And you need a wine that still has like the shoulders to muscle up to a piece of nice beef like that one. So that's why I picked this wine. And it's always fun to try some old stuff and see how it's holding up. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
I mean, the wine nerd in me just wants to talk about this wine for ages. When I found out you were choosing it, you say if this is available, in theory.
It's available for purchase on the Tinhorn Creek website.
By the way, truth, it's just insane. You know, I did a little bit of a deep dive on this. This actually wasn't cheap when it came out. It was $28.
Boom.
Back in the day,
Yep.
which again would have been in the higher end of the red wines there. But I did some look, and the reviews of it were not great at the time, to be honest. It's super interesting to see. They said it was a little green, a little bit weedy, I think, some of them. I'm not going to tell tales out of school, but I'm just about to tell tales out of school. I feel like I Googled it, and I feel like our friend Tony Gismondi gave it an 85, which is relatively low for him out of 100.
But
tasting
friends.
it, yeah, I know.
Sandy
But
and Tony
tasting
are
it right
friends.
now, it's an epiphany. I mean, the fact that this wine is available right now. You know, one of the things about aged BC wine, which is so cool, and, you know, during COVID, so many of us have been going into our cellars and pulling things out, is I'm always loath to pull them out because they're irreplaceable.
Yeah.
You know, I can go buy a case of 88 Chateau Margaux tomorrow if I want. It just costs me a lot of money, but they're available. You know, the things about the treasures that we have, they're not, you can't replace them. So the
Libraries
fact
of
that
life.
this thing is available, it just blows my mind. So anyways, super, super cool. Adriano, sorry, I don't mean to gush about the first person's wine so much. I'm just talking about the nerdy aspect of it, not the flavor profile. Adriano, tell me what you chose.
But actually, I agree with you. Like the BC wines can age really well, and I always hunting for them as well. So actually, I chose a wine from La Stella. La Stella have a winemaker that I also love. Like I love all the winemakers from Okanagan Valley. So Severin, she's a wonderful winemaker. She arrived in 2010, and she's been doing a wonderful job with La Stella and Le Vieux Pain, two wines that I love the most, almost here in BC. So La Stella, they do have like the Italian style, and I really love Italian wines. Like I really like, it's my big to-go wines. And this Merlot is 100% Merlot. It's a Pierre Franc. So Pierre Franc is an unrotated vine. So it's not super old vine. I think like maybe 25 years old or more or less. I don't know. But it's a Pierre Franc. So unrooted vines. So I think like they're more vigorous, more, I don't know, like they're doing a wonderful job. And in this wine, I kind of feel for a certain way, like the Italian style, like this kind of volatile acidity on the wine that I quite love. Like some people, it's very sensible and they don't like it, but I think it's really nice, especially with meat. So Merlot from Tuscany or Super Toscanos from, they're really nice with meat, like raw meat. And on talking about the wine pairing now, like I think like this Merlot 2012, I also choose that vintage specifically because it was a vintage that was kind of very rainy on the start of the year, and then they turn up to be very warm, like really perfect condition for making wine, and super cold at night times. So they ripen the Merlot really well, so it's really fruit forward, and I want that combined with this very classic VA flavors that I kind of get on the La Stella wines. So this both combined with like fruit and kind of, I would say, minerality of the VA, let's say. And but it's still like the very cold nights give this super bright acidity. So it's super food wine, and it's like 12 from 2012. So what I thought about that, like the Shiokoji is like a fermented kind of rice base thing that they kind of cover the meat and kind of they kind of let the meat age, and this gives a little bit of kind of sweetness to the meat as well. It's not just giving flavors or softening the meat, but also a sort of sweetness to the meat as well. So I thought like this volatile acidity, this minerality, this acidity, this and the fruitiness of the wine would match really well. And together with the other spice, if you taste this wine, you're gonna get also these tertiary flavors already. So you're gonna get a lot of like these sweet spices that I quite love. So a lot of cinnamon, a little bit of anise as well, and I think matched with the other spice of the other side of the dish. So, and yeah, they're getting there. Like I think maybe if the wine was aging a little bit more, I didn't have the opportunity to taste older wines of this same producer and wine. But I think if age a little bit more, we're gonna get even a little bit more rustic and match with like the umami flavors of the mushrooms. And yeah, but I think the yeasty, I think like, I really like this wine pairing. I think like that was where I kind of nailed on the pairing. Yeah.
You're happy with your wine pair. I mean, you hit on something a little bit with Daniel's wine, but in particular, yours is the character of Merlot in the Okanagan. You know, this obviously La Stella has an Italian bent to them, in at least in their outlook. And it's not crazy to compare this wine to a Macedo, to a Super Tuscan that has Merlot. There are two regions that create Merlots that people who, especially our Americans friends, think they know Merlot, have no idea until they taste the complexity, the deepness, the power. And none of the sort of insipid smoothness that some people expect from supermarket Merlot down south. It's an amazing thing. And you choose a 2012. You know, a lot of times that would be the old one in the thing. But anyways, 2003 trumps you on that one. But it's a super cool wine. Joey, tell about you.
Yeah, so I actually went with a really young vintage. And to kind of couple with what Adriana was saying, I chose a Zinfandel, and Zinfandel has some of the same genetic makeup as Primitivo, which is from Italy or Croatia. It's a bit of a debate. But I'm Italian, and I love Italian wines. And when I initially looked at this dish, I looked at kind of that like shoyu koji beef and how it was prepared, which Adriana was kind of touching on. It has, you know, it's almost like the salt and the kind of good mold that attaches to the rice. And then it's got this water and salt component, and it's kind of tenderized and creates this really beautiful flavor. But then the beef belly pithivier, which was the one that I kind of latched onto here, it has these like really rich, warm kind of spices. So it's got the coconut and a little bit of, you know, like clove and anise and these kind of warm baking spice flavors. And it's you know, almost like a braised dish within a pastry, or a braised beef in a pastry. And then you have that yeast jus, and the yeast jus really like, it gives this like tangy hit to the jus and gives this like breadiness. And so everything I kind of was thinking on the dish was quite either like bready, toasty, umami, those types of flavors. And I immediately was thinking with those warm spices, I need some fruit. I need a lot of fruit. So I took a new kid on the block, not new in the vines, because these vines are actually 20 years old, but a newer kid to me, Rust Zinfandel, the 2017. This is a big wine. It's jammy. It's quite fruit forward. I thought Barossa Valley Shiraz when I was kind of thinking of a pairing. It's got that fruit that this dish needs. I think it's a really nice complement. Also, I often think with kind of those warm spices or that curry or that coconut, that like throwing in like some dried fruit, it just complements it so well. It gives that like salty, sweet kind of component back and forth. So I'm a fan of this wine. It kind of plays on like those wines from Paso Robles in the United States that kind of are up and coming. And I really wanted to look at something different and just kind of step outside the box. So yeah, I hope that you can kind of see where I went with that and enjoy the two as they kind of complement each other and contrast each other at the same time. So
perfect. Before I talk about that, I think our voting is opening. You've now heard from the Somms on what they were thinking. So voting is open. Vote frequently, vote often. But the voting is open. We're going to throw it to another judge. But I do want to talk about the Zinfandel. And one of the things, I have my phone here, and I know this sounds like a plant, but it's not. Like I actually use, because when I saw that you had chosen Zin, I was like, oh yeah, who else makes Zin? I was thinking, well, I think Desert Hills does, and I click in and I type it into the BCWI app, and I just type in Zinfandel, and it tells me who else grows Zinfandel, and it's actually awesome. It's like, oh yeah, of course Covert Farms grows Zinfandel, who actually they also do sparkling Zinfandel, which is crazy and so good. It's like natural. And Kettle Valley, I was like, geez, I didn't even know Kettle Valley did Zinfandel. I find that's almost the number one way I use the app is if I think, oh, who grows Viognier? I'll just type it in and I'll start getting the results. And half the time I'm like, oh man, they make Viognier and et cetera. So super cool. So anyways, voting is going on, but let's talk to one of our judges and see what they're thinking. I think we have, who do we have? We have Jason Ripley from the Keg here in town. Jason, how you doing?
I'm great, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Well, tell me what you think about these three pretty disparate red wine pairings to go with Chef Austin's beef.
Yeah, that was amazing. I guess we'll start with Daniel's selection of the Oldfield Merlot 2003. I just thought this was an incredible match. The kind of tertiary elements, the earthiness that you get after the wine's aged, worked wonderfully with the pastry. There was kind of a smoky note in the wine, which just brought out just a ton of flavors for me. The wine was incredible in that it was still so ripe, and like the acidity was vibrant, and the tannins were still prominent and well balanced. And I thought that the yeast jus also really kind of brought out more in the wine. So I think that was like, for me, that was my number one match. Adriano's selection, La Stella, again, just another incredible wine. I don't know that I agree with you on the comparison to Massetto. You're, talking about one of the greatest Italian Merlots from Tuscany. But I did note, as I was tasting the wine and the food together, that it did remind me kind of a Bulgari Merlot or, Tuscan wine from the coast. I really liked the kind of herbaceousness of the wine, how it worked with the food. And on Joey's wine, I love Rust. I've worked with them a lot in the past. For me, the wine was a bit too fruity for the food. It was a great wine on its own, but I didn't find it harmonious with the food. That's it for me.
What about, a little bit about pairing wine with red meat. If you couldn't choose one of these three wines, and I woke you up in the middle of the night, what would you blurt out as your natural pairing?
My inclination would have been to Pinot Noir, something mature, like the Merlot was, like the Oldfield Merlot was, with that kind of earthy sort of sous-bois leafiness to it. But it takes a lot of experience, a lot of tasting, a lot of practice to make the right match. And so you have to actually get out there and taste all those wines. So, I mean, my initial impression would have been Pinot Noir, but who knows what it would have been after you've tasted everything.
Okay, thanks for your insight, Jason. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's very cool. And by the way, listen, 2012 Massetto is $1,300 a bottle. So I appreciate it's not exactly the same wine. I don't want to sound defensive. I was being like, it's in the vein of Massetto. And by the way, we're 30 years in. Give us another 30 years, and our Merlots might be $1,300 a bottle as well. It's not. What exactly? It's not
sideways Merlot.
By the way, it is evocative. It is going more towards Massetto than it is Columbia Crest.
Yeah, but you should do a blind tasting of the Merlots from the old world and the...
Okay, well, thanks for Jason. We want to go back. This is. I'm excited about this. We're going to go talk to our good friend DJ Kearney, and she's going to. There she is, and she's going to have an overview of everything she's seen in the last. I'm supposed to say 50 minutes, but I've been going long. So last 65 minutes. But Deej, how are you? I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you.
Okay. How's it now?
Perfect. We're
Okay, fantastic. Well, hello to you, Neil, and to my good colleagues and some ex-students, Adriano, Joey, and Daniel. What a fantastic evening. The chefs have outdone themselves. The food was absolutely fabulous. David and I have been eating and cooking and plating and tasting. And yeah, there's so much to celebrate. I love that conversation about how fantastic our Merlots are, by the way. So thanks so much for all your great choices. What a treat to taste such brilliant wines. I was lucky enough to MC the Vancouver event and taste all the dishes. And I have to say, wow, Victoria, you're really bringing it. It's so, so impressive. Okay, so for that first dish, hi, Chef Nick, we'll come and see you soon. That was an absolutely magnificent dish. The IQ of that dish, the pairing potential was nuts. It's right up there with Chef Alex's little mushroom sauce. If some of you watched the Vancouver event, there was a dish that just took the top of our heads off. So that was a tricky one. There was so much going on in that dish. It was savory, it was salt. By the way, you know, I've been training sommeliers for over 2 decades now. And when it comes to food and wine pairing, and this is something that I did when I was thinking tonight, is you have to put everything in your mouth, all of the elements on the plate, have them together, taste the wine. And if you can still taste the wine at the end, once all the food and wine have dissolved and mingled, to me, that's an important aspect to the pairing. You can still taste the wine and the food flavors are all there. Getting everything on the fork at once is also important. You know, great defenses, by the way. Neil's a lawyer who had a wine conversion experience. But Neil, I'm sure you all appreciated how well they defended their pairings. That's half the fun. A little more smack would be nice. You guys are way too nice to each other. Let's see. So Adriana,
That's right.
your the Martin's Lane, such a brilliant wine. I love your rationale for choosing that one, the softer acidity, the slight whisper of sweetness on the end. It worked very nicely. I thought it was trumped by the other two. Both bubbles really seduced me. I loved tasting the age. So thanks to Joey and Dan for that. Joey, yours was a bold choice. I think the sweetness in that wine was a little tricky on the savory elements of that. When I'm encountering savory food, I want really, really savory wine because that's going to uplift the fruit in the wine and uplift the flavors in the food. So it was very nice, but just a touch out of whack on the finish. Daniel, first of all,
before you go to Daniel, I'm just going to pipe up and ask our judges at home. We have about 7 or 8 of them in, but while DJ's talking, and you know, the reason no one's voting because they want to hear what you say, DJ.
Get them to vote.
But judges, if you can get your votes in, and Deej now, sorry, go to Daniel's pairing, please.
Okay, fantastic. Well, first of all, Daniel, hats off to you for framing this from the point of view of pioneers and people who have influenced our wine industry. That was brilliant, not unexpected from you. I think to me, the dryness of this wine was the secret. It had fantastic ringing, galvanizing acidity. The bubbles were a lovely counterplay on a lot of slippery elements in that dish. So I loved the textural things. When you can compare and contrast at the same time in a pairing, you're cooking with gas, and you did that very, very nicely. If it came down to a toss-up between the two bubbles, the dryness took it, but so does your sabering. Respect for that. I've savored that bottle with a hockey skate before. Yeah. That's the Canadian way. Okay, so Chef Matt, wow, what a dish. First of all, Arctic char. It's such a beautiful canvas for wine. I'm sure that Adriano and Joey and Dan were really thinking red, white, rosé. I could do anything here. Congratulations on making such a savory and earthy dish. My concern was it was going to be sweet. And I think for me, the fatal flaw in pairings is when there's a sweet element in the food and it's not well handled by the wine. Any sweetness in food can strip fruit out of wine. And when I looked at the plate and the wines, that was my fear, but you contain that sweetness so brilliantly. I felt the peach salsa added a little challenge in there. Adriana, I'm going to start with you. I love your bubble philosophy, by the way. I totally support it, and I know Sharon does as well. We can drink sparkling wine through the entire meal. It was beautiful, rich enough for that dish. I love the lazy complexity. I think Sharon said lingering acidity, and wow, was that beautiful. So Joey, you chose something a bit outlandish, how like you, a white Pinot. Silk Scarf makes the other one, as far as I know. It was such a great wine. I mean, Grant can do no wrong, in my opinion. To me, the winning combination there was the texture. I thought the wine was, I just lacked a little bit of a bicep to go with that dish, but the textures were beautifully compatible. There was a richness and a emollients, a creaminess to that wine. And then Daniel, Harry McWater's Chardonnay. I've had that so many times. That's Harry in a bottle, isn't it? Larger than life. And I thought this was a very competent pairing. You know, it worked everywhere. It worked with the fish. It worked with that gorgeous succotash. And it was the best one that handled that little peach element, which was tough on the other two wines. Out of the three, my pick for that one was Adriano's. I thought the bubbles just lifted the dish up. It had enough weight and richness, savory, umami, working nicely. Yeah, killer, absolutely fantastic. And just when you think it can't get any better, we have Chef Austin's dish. I had a lot of fun preparing that one. It looked beautiful on the plate. And that was another complex one, right? That needed a grand slam of a wine, because we had beef that was very tender and very melty, but it was rare, and I specifically made mine rare. It was just a beautiful pink color, shedding a little bit. The sweet and buttery carrots, those wonderful earthy chanterelles with butter. And then that yeast sauce, that was crazy, crazy good. And I had little spoons of it with each of the wines, just to see how it all worked together. So starting again at the top with Adriano, what a beautiful wine. Oh my goodness. Severine, I hope you're listening. 2012 Merlot, man, we do it well. That wine was rich and structured and complex, and still so much fruit in it. It handled all of the elements on that dish beautifully. Great with the beef. It had enough fruit to handle the sweet elements, the succulent carrots. And I love the play of age on the wine with the umami of that yeasty, crazy number. Joey Zinfandel from Rust, I'm also a big fan. I love the fact that you're still being scholarly as ever. It was huge, right? That is a potent, powerful wine, tons of fruit, but it's nice and bright, right? Our Okanagan cleansing acidity. I loved the way it worked. Oh, I haven't mentioned the Pithiviers. Chef, that was beautiful. I'm classically trained as well, and just the way that little pastry was formed and the beautiful knife work on it, outstanding. That was the curveball. That was the sweet element, the exotic aspect that either made the pairing work or fought against it. And I thought there was a little bit of a fight with the next wine, but it worked beautifully with the Zinfandel, with all of its fruit and confidence. Daniel, you're a treasure to bring out that 2003. I remember in 2004 at the Vancouver Wine Festival, I did a screw cap comparison seminar, and that was the one that we had from BC, Sandra's first vintage of the screw capped Merlot. And the wine is magic now. Boy, has it ever come of age in the bottle. Amazing fruit in that wine, fabulous grip. a Marmite quality. You know, it still has a little bit to go. It was lovely with the dish, but I felt when you had the rendang PTVA and the sweetness of it, it wasn't quite as perfect in my mouth as the Zinfandel was. The other thing is, with a wine of that age, I would want really beef that's a little sturdier, not oozing the blood, which is the way I like to have it in this case. But gorgeous work. My pairing from that trio was Joey's, the Zinfandel. With respect to Jason, I felt that with everything together, especially the complex PTVA, it carried the day, it carried the moment. But again, congratulations to all of you. Chefs, you're outstanding, and you guys look like you had a lot of fun. I'm really, really proud of you, and especially proud of how well BC Wines have looked. Man, are they ever high quality.
Thanks, DJ. That's, you know, DJ, one of the things is I've been listening to a podcast on thoroughbred horse racing. And every thoroughbred who races now comes back to one of three traditional horses. The bloodlines are all the same. I feel like that's the same with sommeliers and you. If you trace it back, at least 1/3, and that's probably being underselling it. Have your lineage in them, your tutelage in them, maybe a little bit more. But that's quite amazing. You know, you've been involved in all of these. You've been overseeing all of them. I don't blame our judges for waiting to hear what your advice is before they put their final votes in. But thanks a lot for that. Much appreciated. So, a couple things. I was going to ask Deej about Vancouver Island wines because none of you guys chose Vancouver Island wines. When she did Vancouver, someone had the Unsworth bubbles, amazing Unsworth bubbles, and I was going to have her choose maybe something from Blue Grouse or Unsworth. But I did also want to talk about, while we're finishing tallying the votes, you know, one of the things, you know, DJ obviously loved the pairing with the Zinfandel, and it's like it's a true Zinfandel, right? They used a lot of American oak on that. I think 75% American oak is on that. But I'm trying to think of another wine region because Rust also makes a fantastic Gamay. And if they're not exact opposite ends of the spectrum, they're pretty close. Yeah. And I don't know too many other places where you'd have a producer who you can say, man, I love their Zinfandel, and man, I love their Gamay. I mean, what do you guys think about that as a sort of paradigm? And that's not that uncommon. That's a good example, but it's not that uncommon. Tell me your thoughts about the sort of massive variety you can get, even forget about in one region, in one winery. Daniel, I'm shooting with you first, and then.
Great. Straight in front of the chamber. Yeah, I think, I mean, I think what's really interesting is seeing how like us as a wine industry and a wine growing region have evolved and the different varieties that we can successfully grow here. And obviously there's been some learning curves along the way over time. But you know, then, you know, you have this perfect example of Rust with Zinfandel and Gamay. And I think learning more and more about site selection and knowing where to go grow what grapes. I mean, these are things that other regions have had the advantage of figuring out 500 years ago, and we're just figuring that out now. So I think, you know, as every vintage goes by, we have some very talented people in the Okanagan who can figure out what grows well, and yeah, the range in microclimates and sites, the range in geology. You know, we know that, you know, Gamay loves to find some granite. So, you know, you find a nice plot with great granite and you can plant Gamay there. You know, slightly cooler site, you're going to have great Gamay. Some hotter, rockier site with great drainage, you're going to have great Zinfandel. So I think it's just learning your backyard and having the right people making those decisions.
Now a question, Joy, for you. You know, this is a trick. Obviously, it's always going to be tricky, but I don't think it's speaking out of school to say we have a unique ability in British Columbia to grow and make wines that pair well with food. We have natural acidity. We have natural vibrancy in a way that a lot of other regions don't. So it's going to be tricky when you're choosing BC wines to begin with. You saw what the food you had to pair with was. But forget about the food you have to pair with. When you think in your mind about sort of varietals in BC that you think just magically sing when you're pairing them with food, what are a couple that pop to mind?
Well, I mean, you have to think about the regions that you're dealing with too. Like in the Okanagan, we do Chardonnay, we do Merlot really, really well. And it's pretty evident, you know, you see producers producing these varietals and being really successful at them, and them having, you know, this structure, this ageability, this range. And then, you know, you move to the coastline and you see producers making these amazing bubbles because we have such great acidity in these grapes, and, you know, using grapes like Ortega and Auxerrois and like these grape varietals that are specific to that kind of area. So, I mean, I think you kind of have to look at those regions and think of what they produce well, and then kind of look at what you can do within that kind of confine, right? So like with the Merlot and Chardonnay in the Okanagan, and then on the coastline doing those, or going up to kind of like Lillooet, and you know, you see some amazing Chardonnay coming out of there. They won years ago, I think it was at the Whistler Wine Festival. What's it called? Cornucopia. They won. Fort Barron's won, you know, best Chardonnay. It was like no one had even heard of Fort Barron's, and it just blew it out of the water. So we're, yeah.
For what they're doing up
Yeah,
in
we're really
It's
fortunate.
amazing. Okay, Adrian, I have a quick question for you. Which of the 6 wines that you did not choose tonight, when you look at, doesn't even have to be with the pairing, what's sort of the coolest one? You're like, oh, I like that pairing. I'm envious of that pairing. Which of the other 6 that are in front of your 2 friends here do you look at and say, oh yeah, that one's right in my sweet spot?
Well, it's funny because like we're always talking about sparkling wine, and I need to have a sparkling wine in one of my dishes, and we talk about the sparkling Zinfandel from Covered. So yeah, I was hoping to have on my first course the red sparkling wine made of Syrah from Daydreamer. So was a quite fun experience. Like I really love like tuna tataki and lambrusco. So for me, it's like what I normally drink. Well, I used to drink that a lot. I used to have that on by the glass in my restaurant, lambrusco, and I have my Japanese chef doing the tuna tataki. Was my ultimate pairing. Like I like the soy sauce, bringing like I think it's really fun. So I was thinking like the tuna, the richness of the tuna and the other elements, the umami elements could kind of match. But then I just, I think that was the fun ones, my parents, let's say.
By the way, I normally don't want to pull back the curtain on the judging, but I'm legitimately just looking this, and it is like, it's a dead heat. It is just an absolute, so we have to wait for all the judges to come in. This is awesome. It's stressful, but it's awesome. I want to pick up on something, though, Daniel, that you and I were talking about. I'm interested in what you guys think about this, is when we were talking about the Oldfield Series Merlot 2003, and how some of the reviews at the time were not overly positive. And when you went on like Cellar Tracker, they were okay. Nothing was negative, but they weren't like, oh, let's put this thing in the cellar for 17 years. But one of the things that I think about, and I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are, is how tastes have changed even since 2003, and what people are looking for in a red wine in general, and especially in a red wine that's made broadly in the Bordeaux style or with Bordeaux style grapes. You know, back then the comments were, it's too light, it's too green, wheaty's never good, but it was all talking about there wasn't enough ample, lush, flowing fruit. But that seems like times have changed a little bit. Tell me how you think that, if that's true, tell me if I'm wrong on that, and tell me how you think that intersects with how we're making red wine in the Okanagan now.
I mean, I think when you reference the critics' posts or the reviews, you know, there's I think that time in the early 2000s, obviously there was this Parkerism of wines, where, you know, Wine Advocate was really pushing wines for higher scores. It was more extracted and more fruit. And I can only imagine those 5 people that decided to put a review up might also want to be Robert Parker wannabes.
For sure.
And so they might have been chasing that big extracted fruit style. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, we've gone north of the 49th and it's not there. But I think, stylistically, again, it's an industry coming into its own. And, you have a BC wine consumer that's now 30 years older than they were from the beginning of BCWI, or 17 years older than when this wine was made. And so those tastes will change as well. So I think now we have probably a more educated, more discerning BC wine consumer. I think consumers expect great wines from BC. They're willing to pay, it's obvious, they're willing to pay good money for good wine out of BC, which is great because it holds us all to a higher level of standard and quality. And maybe 17 years ago, the expectation was BC wine should be, extracted and very, very, very big and lush and fruity and, not cost me more than, I don't know, $12 or something like that, right? But now we start to see, price points going up, quality goes up, style, complexity, this is wine ready for a global stage, and we should be proud.
One of the things that's interesting, I'm interested in your thoughts, Joey, we're almost done here. This is so close. I just can't believe it. Is a concept of value. I think I'm right. I think when I looked at this wine was $28 when it came out. But $28 in 2003 was not cheap. I grew up in Alberta, and for the longest time, it hasn't been this way for 20 years. People would say, BC wine, it's too expensive. But I don't know what an Oldfield Series Merlot costs now. Not much more than that. No. Yeah, 30, 31. Yeah. So, I think that's an amazing thing to think about. When you go out now and you have $30 in your pocket, a wine that can, 17 years, it can last longer than 17 years, yeah. Right? It's quite amazing. Anyways, I could blather along and be a nerd about wine things. I've gone long. We do have a winner. I can't tell you the last vote. This is so cool. But anyways, yeah, well, I don't know. That's right.
I want to know who was the last vote.
19, 18, 17. This is what we're dealing with. Can you believe it? Anyways. Yeah, by the way, that is a testament to how awesome this was, how awesome the 3 of you did. But at the end, yeah, I'm going to give you a hand before. But in the end, there had to be a winner, and the winner gets to represent Victoria later this month in the Okanagan. And the winner in the Okanagan will get to be part of the Spring's BC Wine Boot Camp. And I was lucky enough to do that in its inaugural year, and it's just awesome. It's such a great deep dive into all things that are great in the Okanagan, the one-on-ones with the winemakers, and they bring people in from all over the world. It's just fantastic. Anyways, representing Victoria will be Adriano Carpiliano.
Really? That's so funny.
Well, that's very good.
Oh, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I can't believe that.
I know. Congratulations.
Well, thank you for these beautiful wines. No?
I'll give you 30 seconds for a very quick speech because we've gone ridiculously long.
No,
That's
actually,
on me.
I don't need to speak. The wine is speak for myself, and the chefs did an amazing job. And yeah, I love BC wines and so proud to pour in my restaurant. Please come and try all these wines in the restaurant in a few weeks. I'm going to order all of them. They're amazing.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Now, if every other somm in the province does the same thing, this will be a success. Anyone, congratulations. That was just fantastic.
Wow.
As we sign off, I want to say thanks to the BC Wine Institute, to CAPS BC, to Culinary Marketing Strategies, to obviously our 3 somms, our 3 chefs, to our host restaurant Aura, to the Inn at Laurel Point, to all the wineries. You've seen all of them, and we've blathered on about how much we love it. These are fantastic wines that they've partnered with our somms on, and it was a really treat for the judges and everyone to get to try these. And to be continued. In a couple weeks, we'll be in the Okanagan. Adriano will be there, and I think he's got to come in as a little bit of a front runner after this tight battle. Thanks, everyone. That was a lot of fun. Sorry it went long, but we were having too much fun to wrap it up. So thanks, everyone. That was great. Thanks to all 3 of you. You knocked it out of the park.
Thanks, Liam.
All right. See you guys.